You've followed all the rules, ticked all the boxes, yet you're still here wondering, is this really it? Maybe you're in your 20s just starting out, or in your 40s looking back at what you've achieved so far. You've climbed the ladder, reached your goals, but despite everything you've accomplished, there's this feeling inside of you, a sense of emptiness. We live in a world that loves to plan. From the moment we're born, there's a path laid out for us. Education, career, marriage. It's a roadmap to success carefully designed to ensure we achieve everything that society expects of us. But this roadmap, this carefully crafted plan, it's more like a script handed to us from birth. We're given the lines, told the actions, and we follow them, believing that if we stick to the script, happiness will be waiting for us at the end. But what if instead of leading us to fulfillment, this script takes us straight to the life crisis road? Satya talks about midlife crisis as a moment where you realize that the things you once enjoyed aren't fun anymore because you've been too focused on what you thought was necessary. It's like spending years trying to climb a mountain, only to find that when you get there, you start to wonder if you've been climbing the wrong mountain all along. He explains that one of the reasons we feel this way is what philosophers call the incommensurable values. These are choices between things that are both important but can't easily be compared, like choosing between a high-paying job that demands long hours and constant travel, or accepting a lower-paying job that offers more free time and the ability to pursue hobbies and maintain a healthy work-life balance. On one hand, there's the allure of financial security and career prestige. On the other, the value of personal well-being and time for relationships. No matter what path you choose, you'll be giving up something valuable. During a life crisis, this feeling becomes more pronounced as you start reflecting on the choices you've made, the lives you didn't live. Schwartz's concept of the paradox of choice shows why this dilemma is so overwhelming. He argues that having too many choices limits our freedom and leads to anxiety and regrets. When faced with too many options, each with their own set of potential rewards and sacrifices, it becomes challenging to make decisions that lead to genuine contentment. Because this paradox of choice becomes overwhelming when we realize that every decision we make excludes other possibilities, making us feel like we're trapped in a cycle of unfulfilled potential and missed opportunities. So it seems like we could ask ourselves, in a world of endless possibilities, are we really free? Philosophers have debated for centuries on the notion of freedom. Sartre believed that freedom is a fundamental aspect of human existence, but that this same freedom can become a burden. He argues that with freedom comes the weight of choosing one path over another, and that this responsibility can lead to existential angst, and in our case, a life crisis, when we suddenly realize the impact of our choices on our lives. According to him, humans are condemned to be free, because this freedom means that we are entirely responsible for our choices and the paths we take. And I think that this overwhelming sense of freedom can explain why a life crisis isn't just about the well-known midlife crisis, but also affects younger people that are experiencing similar struggles much earlier, even in their 20s, that many call a quarter-life crisis. So maybe I could have made a separate video talking about midlife crisis and quarter-life crisis. But when you look at it, no matter the age, 20 or 40, in the end we were all just kids thrown harshly into adulthood, trying to follow the so-called right path to take. We were all forced at one point to choose a career. And even though there are differences, because it might seem easier for a 20-year-old to change direction than a 40-year-old that might already be married, have kids, and that the notion of time might be different for someone in their 20s than someone that is in their 40s. These sudden realizations that can feel like a spiritual awakening for some. And while even though these three cases are different, I still think that Byung-Chul Han can help us understand these different but similar feelings. In his book, The Burnout Society, he describes our modern world as a society of performance. He explains that we live in a time where people are constantly pushed to do more, achieve more, and be better. Success and productivity have become the main ways we measure our worth. According to him, we don't live in a disciplinary society like Foucault explained it, but now, instead of being told what not to do, we're encouraged to be the best at everything. The message isn't you can't do this, but yes, you can do it. In the society of performance, people are no longer obeying orders, but they're constantly trying to improve themselves. In the society of performance, we believe we're free because we no longer have to obey strict rules or external authorities. But in reality, we're trapped by the pressure to perform. And we think we're choosing to work hard and to hustle to be successful, but we're actually driven by invisible pressures. These pressures come from social expectations, social media, and even from within ourselves. Because we've internalized the belief that our worth comes from our productivity and success. So while it seems like we're free, we're actually trapped by the need to always do more. And because of this, people end up in war with themselves. When someone becomes depressed, it's like they've been wounded in this internal internal war. They've tried so hard to keep up with the demand, but have become overwhelmed and exhausted. A society of performance seems to value freedom, but we end up trapped by this same freedom. As Shoran once observed, man is too proud to accept happiness and has fallen too low to have contempt for it. Happiness engenders inferiority complexes. Who can be proud because he does not suffer? The awkwardness of ordinary people in front of those who suffer betrays our conviction that pain is distinctive and confers originality upon a human being. For one does not become a man through science, art, or religion, to say nothing of philosophy, but through a self-conscious rejection of happiness, through a fundamental inability to be happy. So a life crisis just seems to be one of the many symptoms of this society of performance. When the carefully constructed idea of a successful life begins to fall apart, this life that once made you feel free suddenly makes you feel trapped, as you might suddenly realize that you've been living a life that isn't true to who you are. And when this happens, you might start to think, I could have had a better life. But when you really think about it, this better life you imagine, when you think, what if I didn't choose this career and did this instead? You realize that every detail, every person you cherish, your own actual thoughts and knowledge might not exist in an alternate reality. Imagine your life as a video game. Every time you make a big decision like choosing a job or moving to a new place, you hit a new save point. Each save point represents a different version of your life, like different levels or alternate worlds. If you look at the game map with all of these save points scattered across it, each one shows a different path you could have taken. If you go back to an earlier save point and make a different choice, you'd see a different story unfold. Maybe you'd become a famous singer or live in a cozy place far from society. But the life you're living right now, with all its ups and downs, is the result of the save points you've picked and the choices you've made. If you could switch to one of those other save points, you'd miss out on all the unique experiences and character development of your current game. It's easy to romanticize the roads not taken, to imagine a perfect world where everything worked out. But the truth is, every choice you made led you to where you are now, and maybe it's exactly where you're supposed to be. Despite the pain of a life crisis, it gives you a chance to realign with your true self. It's like being forced to take off your social mask because it no longer fits. You can think of it as finding your own light, just like the Enlightenment age, known as les Lumières, which means light in French. Kant, in What is Enlightenment, explains that enlightenment is a process through which a person frees themselves from a state of self-dependency. This dependency is the inability to use one's own understanding without the guidance from another. It's not due to a lack of intelligence, but rather a lack of courage to think independently. Sapere aude, or dare to know, which also means have the courage to use your own understanding, is the motto of the Enlightenment period. And so just as the Enlightenment called for the courage to challenge old ways of thinking, facing a life crisis requires courage to face your own reality and question yourself. By daring to understand yourself better, you embark on a journey similar to the Enlightenment's pursuit of truth and freedom. The light you seek in this context is the freedom from social conditioning, leading you towards a more authentic and enlightened version of yourself. Shoran also said, life would only become bearable within a humanity that no longer holds any illusions in reserve, a humanity completely disillusioned and delighted to be so. And yes, going through a life crisis can be very scary. It's like jumping into the ocean without knowing if you'll find your way back. But what if instead of being afraid, you saw this as an opportunity to explore the unknown, to listen to the silence within you and discover that you might be freer than you think? The silence that comes with this awakening is not empty. It's actually filled with potential. It's in this quiet space that your true desires and your true self can finally be heard. Just take the time to listen to what the silence is telling you, to use your discernment and follow your heart. I believe that a life crisis isn't a breakdown, but is actually a breakthrough. It shouldn't be about rejecting your past or erasing your choices, but coming home to yourself, to the person you've always been beneath social expectations.